Smart Buildings Academy podcast with Phil Zito, episode 443. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how to go and build a remote operations center. Now, everything that we discuss will be available at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/443. If you're listening to this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, hit the subscription bar and hit the notification bell. And if you're on LinkedIn, please like, comment, and share. I will be paying attention to the comments as this episode goes on. So definitely feel free to ask any questions. There's a little bit of delay, but I will be going and answering those questions. That's why it's important for those of you listening on iTunes or Spotify, try to join these live. They're usually every Monday and Friday at noon, sometimes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, sometimes only Monday. All right, let's dive in. So today's episode, it stems from a conversation I was having with a client of ours. And he was asking, how do you build out a remote operations center? He was finding that he had a lot of installed base of customers, limited service capacity, and wanted to be able to go and connect to these customer sites and provide a remote monitoring and a remote troubleshooting service that would enable a technician to essentially force multiply. For those of you who don't know, force multiplication, it's a military term. You basically have one person who goes and usually through training others, enables people to do the job that that person's doing and essentially force multiplies. But it can also be something that when you are using like a remote operations center, which we'll describe what that is, we'll go through how it works, why you may or may not want to do one. And then we'll talk about really diving into infrastructure, what is the tech stack, what are staffing requirements, operational processes, etc. But at the end of the day, you take this one person, this service tech, and by allowing them to remotely monitor multiple facilities at the same time, you give them the ability to essentially have a presence, whereas in the past they had to physically visit each site. Now they can monitor, correct, adjust, and troubleshoot these facilities. Now, I've seen remote operation centers utilized kind of two different ways in the past. Way number one that I've seen them utilized is by contractors and system integrators as a revenue generation and a lead generation solution. And so to that point, I've seen actually contractors and SIs who offer remote operations services and remote monitoring services at low to no cost, with the understanding that they will usually get some pull-through opportunities for break fix, maybe retrofit, maybe optimization that they can then go sell to their clients. If my voice sounds a little funky, I apologize. I'm getting over a cold. I'll probably make it about 15 minutes in before the voice starts to die too much, but we'll be good. All right. And then I said that one option is low to no cost. The other is a revenue model. This is where actual contractors or SIs will go to their clients and they, through either a Salesforce or just, cold call marketing they'll reach out to these clients and they will offer them a preventative service agreement with remote operations monitoring as an option. And this tends to be some high margin work if done right, and you'll see kind of how to do it right. We'll also talk about how to do it wrong. So there's that as well. Then there's the owner side of things. I've been blessed to have worked with some really large healthcare customers in my past life, helped them establish a remote operations center for one of the largest healthcare organizations in the United States. Essentially, this remote operations center, not only did it do building automation, but it also did access control, PSIM, so physical information security management, energy, lighting management, et cetera. And this operations center was set up in kind of central so their facilities were multi-state. And this facility was kind of set up in the middle of that. And then they had a staff that rotated on 3 8-hour shifts that would remotely monitor everything from our doors left open. Are we monitoring stairwells for, patients like literally dying in a stairwell? Are we monitoring environmental conditions, et cetera? And the benefits of this was they had fairly experienced people. And that's another thing you could do. Do we have inexperienced people with very strong processes, or do we have very experienced people? And they chose very experienced people who then could triage a lot. And then if they couldn't triage something remotely, it would either go to on-site staff or it would go to their network of contractors. So that was kind of what they did. The benefits of a remote operations center, as you could probably already tell, it really is cost effective when done right. You can take one person and have them, in a sense, doing, especially if you augment it with AI stacks and things of that nature, you can have them doing the job of 3 to 4 people. It gives you the ability to flex, especially if you're an owner customer. Your ability to staff a remote operations center and then use outside sources like mechanical contractors and whatnot means you can hire and pay that one person or 3 people if you're running 3 8-hour shifts in the remote operations center. You can go and hire that person and pay them pretty well, pay them comparable to SI or contractor pay, and then have, kind of lower paid individuals in the actual facilities. And then anytime you're actually paying attention to your building, you're typically going to get better efficiency, better control, better environmental conditions. So that is definitely a benefit of the remote operations center. Now let's talk about, how do you actually design this? I had thought, maybe I would go on the whiteboard and actually draw out a stack and draw out an infrastructure. If that's something you all are interested in, please, by all means, go and leave me a comment. Just post something in the chat and let me know that, yeah, it'd be interesting to see you build something out on the whiteboard. For today, we're going to just talk about it at probably a 20,000-foot level. I'm not going to get into individual products. I'm just going to talk kind of technological solutions. So whenever you think of a remote operations center, there's layers of capabilities, right? So with certain building automation systems or just smart building systems in general, so a PSIM, a DSIM, et cetera, an EMS, a lighting system, whatever, AV, these systems, in order for you to remotely monitor them, you have to connect with them. Now, you can do a connection of multiple different types, right? You can have a server that sits on-prem or on premises, which means at the physical site, and then you can remote into that server. That's one way. You can have a data pipe connection that pulls data out of the building systems and pulls them into some sort of cloud server. You can have a remote on-prem server. So you have a server that sits in the remote operations center and you pull data out of the building or buildings. There's a variety of approaches, and it really depends on kind of your security posture. So what is the data you're pulling out? Is it read write? Is it read only? Are you in some sort of thing where either DoD or some sort of critical facility that mandates compliance with, NIST or some framework around security? There's a variety of things you need to consider. But how I typically see these by and large implemented across the board is a fairly simple approach. And this is something you could do quite possibly if you have baseline understanding of BACnet, you have baseline understanding of the control system you're working with, and you have access to a server software. If I were sitting in your shoes, I'm a big fan of the Azure stack, Microsoft Azure. I know .NET programming. I like the .NET framework. I like C#, stuff like that. That's what I prefer. But, if you prefer Java and you prefer things like AWS, that works just as well. They're both equally good. But what you could do is you can actually go into Azure. You can stand up a VM. You can then a virtual machine. Once you stand up that virtual machine, then you stand up a virtual private network, a virtual VPN. You connect that with either a physical or software appliance. That's just a fancy way of saying a device that then connects to the BAS devices on site. That appliance allows the BAS traffic to travel across the secure VPN to the secure server in Azure or AWS. And then you have your appliance at your remote operations center, and you then can just UI in to the web browser for the web server, and you can monitor all that collected data. It's a very simplified example. Let me just check for questions real quick, and then I will kind of expand upon that. So whenever you start thinking about this, the first thing you need to do is a site audit. You need to get an understanding of the facility or facilities that you're monitoring, the systems, their current state. And we're talking HVAC systems in our case, because we're talking building automation on the podcast. But, if this was access control, if it was lighting, just do the lighting, do the ballasts, right? The switches, et cetera, the access control, the card readers, the locks, et cetera, whatever you are going and monitoring and pulling in. Once you have figured out what you have, then you need to understand how do you pull that information out of the software. It may be a BACnet interface. It may be a RESTful API. I do want to say some solutions have licensing requirements. If you go down the BACnet path, it may be more expensive from a licensing perspective than to just do a straight RESTful API pull. It all depends on your technical capabilities. How adept are you at working with data? How adept are you at working with integrations, protocols, etc.? But like I said, it's going to start with identifying your HVAC systems, your BAS systems, then your software and how that software exports data or allows connectivity outside. Use the appliances, as I mentioned, and the VPNs to then go and connect from the BAS system to the actual server up in the cloud. This is where you start making cybersecurity decisions that are way outside the scope of this episode, but essentially you have to, are we going to do multi-tenancy, single tenancy? Are we going to, air gap things? Not air gap. Are we going to firewall things? How are we going to segment data, et cetera? Once you make those decisions, then at the end of the day, you have to say, all right, we've got the data. How are we going to analyze this? Are you going to use just out-of-the-box alarming? Are you going to lay some sort of AI software on top, some sort of analytics, some sort of either rule-based or decision-based analytics that are going to identify potential faults or potential inefficiencies? The sky's the limit at that point. But the tech stack in and of itself, quite honestly, is not very difficult to do. I've advised organizations on implementing this dozens of times, and this is the least difficult part of it. As long as the site survey is done correctly, meaning you've correctly gathered the systems that are in place, physical systems, you've gathered information on the control systems that are in place, the software versions and their capabilities. Once you have all of this information, then, you're good to go. Now it's a matter of staffing and setting up the processes, which, we're actually working in reverse. You should build your processes first, then build the team to support those processes, and then build your tech stack. That's typically how it's done. All right. I'm going to take a sip of water because I can hear my voice getting progressively more like Batman, and that's not going to be fun for you to listen to. All righty. So now we move into building the team. And building the team breaks out kind of into two buckets in my experience. One is staffing the team, and the other is training and developing the team. Now, there is a third bucket around building the team, and that's getting executive buy-in. That's a whole nother topic in and of itself. How do you build out cost forecasts? How do you build out sales forecasts? What is the time to sell? How long are you going to have to operate this team in a revenue negative scenario before you become revenue positive? Because it's kind of that chicken and the egg. You have to have the team and the processes and the tech stack to be able to support customers, but customers are what pay. That's why, honestly, in my opinion, remote operation centers tend to make really good investments for owner operators because they're able to have that single or set of a handful of really smart, well paid, well skilled people that act, in that force multiplication role across their enterprise. And it's less dependent on selling because once these people start to have an effect, they immediately reduce how much you're dependent on contractors and they make your facility run better. So they pay for themselves pretty quickly. On the contractor side of things, you have to go and build this and then you have to sell it. And that is a slow burn, but the upside of being able to retain customers, to get really intricate, detailed information of your customer systems and the potential for pull through, they are really attractive if done right. So as I mentioned, staffing requirements. The key roles and responsibilities within a remote operations center team, there's really kind of three roles as I tend to see them. The first role is going to be some sort of interface, usually a dispatcher of some sort. This person, whether it's on the contractor or the owner side, they exist to take the information that is being communicated to them by the level 1, level 2 techs in the ROC, the remote operations center, and then communicate that with either field personnel or to engage outside contractors to do work. So the responsibility of this person is managing work orders, managing triage, and communicating and relaying information between the different teams, both the outside service teams and the internal operations teams. Then you have kind of level 1 remote operations, and this isn't meant to imply I know a lot of people hear level 1 tech and they think green. Level 1 doesn't necessarily mean green. It just means that this is the person who, on the day-to-day basis, is monitoring the system. They're checking alarms, they're checking faults, they're maybe running reports. They're doing a variety of contracted, predictable actions. And then level 2, these are the people who are resolving kind of situations that can't be resolved by level 1. So you get into kind of complex issues. The level 2 more experienced person may dive into the programming. They may dive into PID tuning. They may go and look at scheduling and look at global logic, averaging logic, etc. So those are kind of the roles that I see broken out. What roles do you all, for those of you who are using remote operations, what have you seen in the past when you have gone and worked with a remote operations team? Someone on YouTube just posted, "I knew you were Batman." That's funny. Yeah, my kids give me a hard time about that because my voice, whenever I get a cold, it gets deeper and deeper and gravelier and gets that Christian Bale voice. Maybe not. Training and development. So it's important that anyone who's going to remotely operate a building or remotely monitor a building, and there's a key differentiation there between operating and monitoring. Monitoring and operating, two totally different skill sets. Monitoring, you want them to be able to understand the BAS, how to read the points. You want them to understand how buildings work. And you want them to understand how the different building systems work how HVAC theory works. So you're talking kind of 2 to 3 year tech level. That's right about where you want that level 1 person. That level 2 person, however, that person needs to have more of a 5 to 7 year experience level, because that person needs to really understand ramifications of, if I go in and I change a program, I change a system, how does that really impact things? And often when we work with an organization to build out one of these teams, what we'll do is we'll go and list out the job description. We'll find the key skills that they need to have and the key tasks, and we'll help them build a skill and task matrix, and we'll help them identify the associated training with that, whether that's SBA training or that's some sort of outside training like certified energy manager or, Niagara TCP, something like that. Then we move into the operational processes. And operational processes are something that are really important. And it's where folks either make or break their operational center. It's where you should spend the most of your time. And if you follow the Pareto principle of operational processes, and you think of, what are the 20% of the things I'm going to do 80% of the time? Well, that's scheduling, checking trends, checking alarms, going to a graphic, logging into a supervisor, connecting into a controller, looking at a live program. Those are things you're going to often do. Things you may not find yourself doing very often are going and reconfiguring device IDs for BACnet, or going and running network traffic sniffers, things like that. I get oftentimes, since we are pretty much the go-to for a lot of the IT training in the industry, we get a lot of people who come to us and they're like, I want to learn how to dive deep into the BACnet packets and really understand what is going on when, you've got a BACnet message being sent, and I want to dive deep and analyze it and pull it apart. And I'm like, we could definitely teach you that. We have courses that do that, but I don't think it's a good use of your time. There's software like Optico's Visual BACnet that go and do that, much faster than Wireshark ever will. And the thing is how often are you going to have to go and really troubleshoot malformed BACnet packets? Something's broken, and it's probably coming from something else if this is happening all of a sudden. But in reality, most of the time, you're going to be going into schedules, you're going to be going into trends, you're going to be going and checking, why is this mechanical system not working right? So focus on the things you do the majority of the time. And once you've got that narrowed down, you list out those processes. And I like UML. For those of you who have never used UML, it's a software approach to mapping out use cases, mapping out data flows, etc. There's business process frameworks as well, but I like UML, and it's just easy for me. And essentially, you start with whatever is initiating the use case or initiating the process. Maybe that's a person, maybe it's some sort of software alarm, whatever. And then you list out, how do you react to that process? What is done? And once you've built out these process maps, that's what your team follows. And that's how you really optimize these remote operations centers, is by going and building out process maps and having, okay, here's our changing a schedule process map. You may be like, Phil, this is stupid. Why do I have to build out a process map just simply to change a schedule? That's super easy to do. Well, yeah, but you want the least experienced person to be able to do that. Now you're like, Phil, you said at a remote operations center, you can have really experienced people. I absolutely did. But I also said another thing is you can have really strong processes and less experienced people. So you have to make your decision. In my opinion, you should always have really strong processes, because I've seen really smart people, including myself, who, I'm not saying I'm really smart, but I'm pretty experienced, mess things up by not following the process and just doing their own thing. So having a process is critically important. Once you've built out these processes, then you simply go and schedule them. So this may look, in the case of a remote monitoring solution, not operations, this may look like daily alarm checks, daily out of limit checks, schedule checks, override checks, etc. So you have a list of processes that you do. From a management perspective, so if you're managing the facility remotely, this may look like a different set of processes. But at the end of the day, you want to have two kind of buckets of processes: your repeatable, predictable processes, and then you want to have your failure processes. Oh, this point failed, this object failed. How do we escalate? What do we check? Who do we communicate to? What number do we call? Where do we forward this alert to? These are all things you should be thinking. One of my favorite ways to build out a process is to say, then what? So you're like, okay, we get an alarm notification from the building. Okay, then what? We navigate to the alarm. Okay, then what? Well, we check the alarm against our list of alarms and what are the likely causes. Okay, then what? Then we go and you get what I'm going. I don't have to keep going, but you then wet your way through until you come to a logical break. And once you've got that logical break, you then go and say, okay, we've defined our troubleshooting process for that issue. And then you document it. And that document gets stored somewhere, either on a maintenance site or share drive or whatever. And you use that document. All right, let's keep going. So this wouldn't be a solution without actually getting someone to buy it. So at the end of the day, how do you get people to buy this solution? I am of a mind that as an industry, we do a poor job of solution selling. I read on these LinkedIn posts quite often, why are people positioning this? Why are they communicating this? And in most cases, it's because they're not solution salespeople, they're product salespeople. And anyone who's ever worked for my organization knows we hammer, understand the customer pain, understand their business better than they know their business, and then try to find the solution to the pain that they either have and know about or have and don't know about. So in this case, what kind of pain points do you think someone would have in order to go and need a remote operations service? Feel free to post that in the chat. Whatever you think someone would need remote operations or remote monitoring service for. I will tell you some of the most common needs are they have staff shortages. They have a aging workforce that is exiting, so they have staff knowledge. They may have work capacity, but they may not have knowledgeable staff. So you need to go and determine what are the reasons why someone would want this. Maybe they can only afford to have a couple senior people. And so using a centralized remote operations approach makes a lot of sense. So you got to understand why people need this. And then once you understand why they need this, then it's a matter of just positioning the value. So positioning the value is going to be either financial, logical, or emotional. So logical is just going to be explaining the ramifications of their current approach versus this approach and the logical reason why they would want to do it. Financial is, showing the cost of what they're using right now in maintenance costs, the cost of downtime, like if the OR goes down, et cetera, and then showing a simple payback projection of using remote services. And emotional, that is, a decision that's made, almost every decision is made on emotion and kind of validated with logic. All right, so there you have it. We're at about 30 minutes now. My voice is almost completely gone. So I will open it up for any questions, see if anybody has any questions. Definitely keep your eyes. If you're not on our email list, go to our website, sign up using any of our links, smartbuildingsacademy.com. Our Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals will be coming next week. So those of you who always wait till November to purchase our training programs, this is your opportunity to go and do that. So definitely, like last year, there will be a first come, first serve limit on how many of those discounts are available. They sold out really freaking fast. So be paying attention. We'll blast it on social. We'll email everyone. If you are subscribed to us anywhere, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you'll get a notification. So definitely pay attention to that. That being said, I'll see if anybody has any questions anywhere on the interwebs. And like always, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all listening. We'll be doing another Ask Me Anything in December. So keep your eyes out for that. We'll be soliciting questions probably next week for the Ask Me Anything. That'll be coming, I think, the second week in December. We're not going to have a podcast Friday. We're doing our team retreat. I'm flying everyone to Phoenix, and we're going to be coming up with kind of our new ideas for next year. We're releasing our electrician and our mechanics course in the month of December. So electrical subs and installers, we got a training course for you finally. And if you're a mechanic, we got an HVAC fundamentals course for you as well. We're going to continue to grow and expand our training library. So any ideas you have, do not hesitate to let us know. That being said, thank you, everybody. If you found this valuable, please like, subscribe, share, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Once again, I apologize for my voice, but it is what it is. Thanks so much, and I will see all of you, if not later this week, then definitely next week.